Another Friday afternoon in the West Bank village of Belayin, and another demonstration against the Israeli government's wall that will take over half of the village's land.
لأنك كل أسبوع بتضرب غاز على القرية أكثر من 1000 كيلو غاز، إحنا بنقول لك اليوم، أنا بقول لك هيني، في عندنا مسيرة سلمية حافظ على الشهاب.
It matters little what they're called, whether walls, barriers, or fences. The intention is the same, to redefine human relations into us and them. This is a story about division, about the barriers that men erect in calculation or desperation to separate themselves from others or others from them. When diplomacy and conciliation fail, this is the alternative.
I call it a wall of shame because hundreds and thousands of Palestinians are without jobs because of the wall, are without freedom of movement because of the wall, are without their olive trees. And Israel is blindfolded, is refusing to see. And the population of Israel are not ashamed.
There's nothing new about so-called protective walls. Most ancient cities had them. The ones we see today around Jerusalem date from the 16th century. But the 21st century walls not only look different, they serve a different purpose. The wall is just over 700 kilometers long so far. It's costing $2 million every kilometer. It began in 2002, and it goes deep into Palestinian territory in the West Bank and Jerusalem, splitting neighbors and encircling villages. It's the biggest construction project in Israel, and one that its supporters claim is necessary to ensure Israel's security.
This fence is for security reasons. This fence is only for blocking the way of suicide bombers into Israel.
And yet plans for the division of Israel and Palestine predate the relatively modern phenomenon of suicide attacks. The plans were decades in the making.
Well, the wall really follows out of Israeli policies for the last 100 years, even before there was an Israel. Essentially, the problem is that Zionism has claimed this country, from the Mediterranean to the Jordan River, exclusively for the Jews. There is no other people here for the Israeli Jews. There's no Palestinians. There's no other collectivity with other rights to this country. This is our country exclusively, period.
The names of Professor SOFFER and ex-Prime Minister Sharon come up repeatedly in any discussion of the wall. SOFFER is the ideologue who first drew the maps for a construction of a wall in the 1980s. But it was the politician Sharon who put the reality on the ground.
The day he was elected, second time as Prime Minister, this very important evening, he called me to bring him next day my map with my proposal about the disengagement. Not to sit with him, but to give him my map, because my map was ready. And if you ask me how I did the map, I would say 90% I took in my consideration demography, 2-3% holy sites, and maybe 7-8% only security. My vision was that if we would like to keep Israel as a Jewish democratic state, We cannot enjoy the luxury of having all of Palestine, very sorry, because demography is the most deterministic factor in our problem at the moment.
As the main political force behind the erection of the wall, it fell to Israeli Prime Minister Sharon to allay the fears of Israel's backers. Good fences make good neighbors, he told US President George W. Bush, astutely quoting American poet Robert Frost.
Hopefully, good walls can make good neighbors. It goes all over the world. See the wall between me and my second house, and we are very good friends.
But Palestinians and Israelis have never been good neighbors, and the wall is a physical reminder of the antipathy on both sides. And even the very name of this divide is a contentious issue. Israel's official name for the wall is separation barrier. To some, it is a wall, while to others, it is a fence.
Only 3% of the barrier is wall. 97% is fence. Everybody wants to show in television the wall. But you have to remember that this wall is against shooting. It's only in places when people live very close to the fence and they can shoot through. Then you had to put it their wall. 97% is just a transparent fence.
But though a fence may have less visual impact, it takes up more ground.
It's true that the majority of the structure is not like this. The majority of the structure is electronic fence. That's only one component. There is patrol roads, there is detection paths of sand, there is trenches, there is razor wire. It's a very wide expanse. This is why the Israeli authorities use the term fence. But in fact, that part of the wall, to me, is actually worse than what you see here. The footprint is much wider. You have a 50 or 60 or 70 meters plus a buffer zone. And in terms of the damage it does to the environment, in terms of olive trees uprooted, irrigation systems cut, it's actually much worse than the wall part here.
And in many cases, the Israelis have taken land that has been passed down through generations of Palestinian families. Abu Akram has spent all his life farming in Ad-Dabba, but the arrival of the wall has brought disaster.
This is our land. I inherited from my father, who inherited from his father. When the wall came, they bulldozed a road through my field. My olive trees were destroyed.
And with the destruction of the olive trees comes economic ruin, as Palestinians are left unable to work because they are forced to spend so long negotiating the divide.
They forbade us from going to the other side of my own field freely. To get there, I have to pass 4 villages, up to the valley, and then walk by foot to the land. But even when we pick up a sack of olives, it has already cost us so much, even more than the selling price. We have despaired. One cannot leave behind what is his, but we are utterly sick of what is happening. If you go around and ask most villagers here, the wall is killing them.
It is driving people to despair because the younger generation have there's no future livelihood for these villages. They're agricultural villages. If they're in a situation where only about 200 people or 300 people out of a population of 10,000, for example, some villages we've been to where only 200 or 300 people can get regularly to their land, obviously you can't call it an agricultural village anymore.
This wall has divided my land into 2. If I want to go to the far part, I have to be issued with a permit from the checkpoint and be escorted by a policeman and the settlement security officer to let me pass. through a second gate into my land. They close it behind me and I wait for them to open it later. I tell you, at times I was waiting till midnight. I'm here. My wife is on the other side. I'm calling her. She cannot get here, and I cannot go there.
For as long as Palestinians suffer economic hardship, it's argued that there will never be peace.
I'll tell you, equality makes us better neighbors. If the Palestinians will have what Israel has, in legal terms, infrastructure for a state, a legal system, autonomy in education and welfare, and their own budgets and their own borders is only part of it. It's what's inside the border. If there will be equality, two states, equal in the family of nations, and not one occupying the other, this will make for good neighbors. But good neighborhood is not necessarily love.
And yet it is argued that the wall exists to protect the economy, or at least the Israeli economy.
From 2001 until 2003, Israel lost almost 4% for its GDP. In those years, I mean, no one goes to see even a movie in Israel. No one used the buses in Israel because the security situation.
And according to the wall's architect, the security of the Israeli people comes first.
You see, you start from the end, and you give me a clear picture, a very miserable picture about people who suffer from the war. Go back from the beginning. Why we did it? Because of the suicide bombers, because of the sabotage, because of 1,000 Jews, children and other people that were killed in kindergartens, in coffees, in hotels.